Okay.
Let's squeeze past. There we go.
Okay. Other stuff going on. Okay. Hi, Ben.
It's 7, right? It's chilly. It is chilly in here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Keep us awake, right?
Straight up. Seated.
7 o'clock.
It is. Oh, that's already. Sure. All right, great. Everyone's here. Let's do it. All right, we're going to get started with the November 13th meeting of the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery Township. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming out on this dark night. It feels like it's midnight until we get used to this. Is there any public comment tonight on anything not listed on the agenda?
Yes.
Ken?
Do you need my address?
Yes, please.
105 Bellows Way, Montgomery Township.
Thank
Benjamin Hartranft. We good?
you.
Okay. Tonight, I'm here to express to Montgomery Township that we need more sensory training for people with special needs. I have advocated for it, and I am asking this board to see if we can get approval for Culture City to actually come in and do training with special needs in our township. I saw Governor Shapiro posted something about autism statistics, and he did stuff for autism down in Drexel. I would love to see if this township can get involved some way with Culture City. They are a great organization. They do the sensory bags. They have a sensory room, and I'm asking this township if we can do that. I would love to be a leader in sensory inclusion for Montgomery Township. So let's see if we can make that happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. We can certainly look into it.
Can you send us some links? Okay, thanks.
Announcement of executive session.
Thank you very much. The Board of Supervisors met in executive session earlier this evening at 6:30 to discuss 2 personnel matters. The topic discussed is a legitimate subject of executive session pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Law.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item number 5, and that is our consent agenda. I'm going to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented for the following: minutes of the October 23rd board meeting, minutes of the October 27th budget work session, payment of bills for November 13th, 2023, escrow release number 3 for Higher Rock Residential, real estate tax assessment appeal for 947 Bethlehem Pike, real estate tax assessment appeal for 1070 Bethlehem Pike, and real estate tax assessment appeal for 295 DeKalb Pike.
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Going into planning and zoning, item number 6 is Atlas Broadband Solutions preliminary final land development application. Carolyn.
Good evening. This applicant has been before you for conditional use, which is required under your ordinance for a flag lot. The applicant is proposing to subdivide an existing 1.61 acre parcel located at 1011 Lansdale Avenue into 2 lots. Proposed Lot 1 will retain the existing single-family detached home, detached garage, and associated driveway. Proposed Lot 2 creates the flag lot for a new single-family detached home and new driveway with access off of Lansdale Avenue. In the R2 zoning district, flag lots are permitted when approved by conditional use, which the board granted during their September 26, 2023 public hearing. Township staff consultants have had the opportunity to review the details and provide comments where needed. This application was presented and reviewed by the Planning Commission at their October 19th meeting. The minutes from that meeting are included in your packet. If the board chooses to grant preliminary final approval, they will need to do so by adopting a resolution which has been drafted by the solicitor's office and reviewed by the applicant's professionals. Tonight, Susan Rice is here with the applicant to present and to answer any questions the board has. And the solicitor is also prepared to answer any questions you might have concerning the resolution.
Just to bring to your attention, Chair Chimera, I just wanted to, we did put and it's, of course, the Board of Supervisors' absolute discretion, but we did put the applicant on notice related to waiver number 7, which is the sidewalk waiver. That traditionally, or at least in the last couple of years, this board has been hesitant to waive that requirement. And we did let the applicant know and that was discussed with the Planning Commission as well, from what I understand.
Planning Commission did want the sidewalk.
Yep.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions on any of the other waivers other than the sidewalk?
I guess if we could invite Ms. Rice up to present and give us some information, that would be great.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure, no problem. I know we went through this very thoroughly with the conditional use, but I didn't have a waiver list at that time, so I'll quickly go through those for you. So waiver 1 is a request to allow our storm pipes to be less than a 15-inch diameter. We have a small BMP and it's going to be maintained by the homeowner and not the township. So we're asking for that waiver. It will be a 10-inch diameter instead of 15. Number 2 is a waiver that requires a minimum 4-foot high fence around the top of the surface of the stormwater facility. This is a very small above ground facility. The maximum height from the bottom of the basin to the top of the berm is 1 foot. From the bottom of the surface area to the spillway is a 1/2 foot, and the ponding is 2 inches or so. So we don't have a lot of ponding in that area that would necessitate a fence. Number 3, which requires minimum of 50% of the circumference of any stormwater management facility to be planted with a mix of trees and shrubs. We're asking for a partial waiver, and we discussed this with your township landscape architect. We are planting the shrubs, and we're using the existing trees that are surrounding the property as the tree component of that requirement. Number 4, which requires all features within 400 feet of the site be included on the plans. We include an aerial photo in our plan set. Number 5 is this requires additional 10 foot of widening with curb along the frontages of lot 1 and 2 on Lansdale Avenue. Lansdale Avenue, as you know, is a PennDOT road. They're not really happy with curb on their roads, and the drainage currently comes into the property. And if we were to put, and we're at the high point of the road, so if we were to put curb, it would block the drainage and keep the drainage on the road instead of bringing the drainage onto our property, so we can manage it. Number 6 is the sidewalk waiver, and we're requesting that waiver because there's no sidewalk on our side. Sidewalk is in this area on the other opposite side of the road. We wouldn't be connecting to any pedestrian facilities on our side of the road. That's it.
I guess number 1 we actually have is the preliminary plan.
Yeah, our numbers are off by
Our numbers are off by
Yeah,
one,
I
so we're
was gonna say
missing the
mine might have-
filing a preliminary plan due to the
Oh,
plan being
'cause
minor
I'm-
subdivision.
Because I'm reading from my
the
letter.
resolution.
The resolution is in front of you.
Sorry about
that's the
that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Each of the board members should have a copy of the resolution.
Yeah, I do.
I would still like to see the sidewalk be there because we have required every other developer to do it. And I think we all agree that you got to start somewhere to, to get the connectivity that we want.
Agreed.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're gonna deny 7. Does anyone else?
I have some questions about number 4 on the resolution, which is about the trees and plants, shrubs, etc. I'm kind of reluctant on waiving any plantings, but I see that you say you want to use your existing trees, and I'm all for keeping the existing mature trees and shrubbery, etc. As well. But can you tell me more about?
Yeah, sure. I can show you the plan. Do you want me to bring it up? It's easier to see.
Okay.
So we're talking about this area in here, and there's a number of
Which are adjacent to other properties.
right,
Mhm.
and they run right along the property
Mhm.
line, and they're fully mature trees. So I think that the idea is that these trees will remain.
Mhm.
We're not touching them.
Mhm.
They can, do what is intended by the ordinance for this BMP. We also have it along the south side property line as well, and those are remaining. So I think the idea is that those are mature trees, so why are we adding more that could, eventually grow and sort of choke them out, that sort of thing.
Are there replacement trees though? I mean, so how many trees and shrubs are you removing
To
on
build
lot?
the structure.
Yeah.
So we meet your ordinance. We are less than what we're, the percentage, oh gosh, what is it, 20-something%. So for all of the trees that are up to 48-inch and greater, we meet your ordinance requirement and there are no replacement trees required, okay? There are 2 trees on the site that are larger than 48-inch trees. One is the one right in the center, it's about 54-inch. And then there's one that's over, it's not on this plan, but it's over along this property line. It's not in great health. It's healthy enough to be counted as a tree, but it's going to be impacted by the development, so that one's coming down. That's a 58-inch tree, and that tree requires replacement. So these shaded trees that you see on the plan are those replacement trees for that 58-inch tree that's coming down. And there's 8 of them.
Okay.
I mean, if you're not okay with it,
I-
we can deny it.
Yeah. Is this something that our landscape architect has looked at, or are they okay with it?
I mean, she didn't give great notes on it. I think she just commented that a waiver was
They
requested.
gave greater notes during the conditional use portion, and because of the amount of trees that are actually being saved on the property, while they're mature trees, and I know we're more sensitive to that now, they felt it would negatively impact their ability to do what they're permitted to do by the conditional use that you gave them. Okay. Okay, I think with that explanation and with that,
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
All right. And with the 10-inch diameter pipe compared to the 15-inch diameter pipe, is that going to be enough to
Yeah.
take care of this whole house? I mean, it's a rather large house.
It is, and that's typical sizing for stormwater systems on a single family house. And we did provide your engineer with the calculations to show that those pipes have the capacity to handle the water.
And we're good with the engineer's report on that then with the 10-inch?
Yes, we didn't have any concerns from the engineer regarding the stormwater management facility on site.
My only other thing is I'm always a little worried when we say no to a fence, even though you're saying only the littlest bit of water could be there. A kid crawls, a kid, I mean, does anyone have any of our professionals have any thoughts on that? The 4-foot high fence around the surface?
I know,
stormwater?
when other stormwater facilities have been proposed, the fencing has been a challenge because of debris that can get in there, and as well as, then it would impede the water to be able to flow in there.
And it also, it's sort of, this BMP is supposed to sort of just kind of blend in and not be a big,
A
huge,
formal
deep
stormwater facility.
stormwater collection area. So if you put a fence around there, it just kind of says, wonder what that is, sort of, and, and it takes away some usable backyard area that is usable, except maybe in a rainstorm where there's about 2 inches of flow in there.
Okay,
And fencing also, it sort of comes into effect when you have, like the pool fencing is when you have like 2 feet or 1 foot, the ponding depth of about 2 feet is when sort of fencing starts to come into play. And
Yeah, I remember when we were listening to the folks from the Bharatiya Temple, and we didn't grant them that waiver, but we also felt like that was, a gathering place for the community where where lots of children would be roaming around, and so I felt justified in not granting that waiver. But this seems like there would be so
It's more private.
yeah, much more private and a lot less foot traffic in the immediate area.
And you're right. I think drawing attention to that fenced area will be like, what's over here?
Right.
Let's
Let me
go
play
check it
here.
out. Or for that matter, let me take my dog there to run it
The
around
attractive
or whatever.
nuisance.
closes off the backyard,
Yeah.
then they can use it,
Mhm.
most of the time.
okay. Are we fine with allowing the aerial plan sheet? Number 5.
Mhm.
And then the last thing would be the 10 feet of widening with curb along the frontages. I don't really know how hand in hand that goes with sidewalk, if we're going to require sidewalk.
Sure.
Who can answer?
Do you want to take that, Greg,
Greg.
as far as the,
Yeah, we do have some areas in the township that don't have curbing, where we do have sidewalk. One of those areas is right up at Stump Road that we just added, last year.
Okay. So that
So,
we don't need to do that. We don't need to have
No.
curbing to have sidewalk.
no, and I would kind of agree with what she was saying too, with the drainage issues.
Okay.
Along with that, if that's the only area that has curbing, it could impede the water flow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll serve as a channel almost.
Yeah.
And redirect it
Right.
and accelerate volume, et cetera.
Exactly.
And you would have to put storm pipe in if you want to collect it, and there's really nowhere to go with the storm pipe. We're at a high
It's better to
point.
go in and filter down.
Yeah. This way, it's already coming into our site and we're managing it in our site and accounting for all that runoff.
Right.
Okay. I agree. Very logical. All right. So it seems that the only one that we are going to deny would be 7,
Number
which is
7.
the sidewalk.
And that's consistent. Even, you had Pecan Properties come in for a minor subdivision and you required them to put
Yep.
sidewalk in as well.
Which is also on Lansdale Avenue.
Yeah, but we have to start somewhere.
Correct. Will that be okay?
Well, no, but I don't have a choice. Those poor guys that have to,
Right.
shovel sidewalk for somebody who's not even gonna walk on it. I think of those things when I'm talking about this.
Well, when the next property sells, then
The deferrals where, you don't put the sidewalk in now, but the person is obligated to do it if the township comes along later with sidewalk.
No, we don't typically do those deferrals. The one thing that the board can consider is, postponing the sidewalk installation till a building permit is approved. However, that would also have to be noted on the record plan so that if it was sold, the person would know they're required to put sidewalks in, not just the home they're constructing.
Okay.
Okay. So. Do I need to read all these whereases?
No, I think you would just really make a motion to approve the resolution and the waivers with the exception of waiver number 7. And I think that's clear.
Okay.
Wait,
All right, so I'm going to move to adopt resolution number 2023-17, approving the preliminary final land development application with requested waivers for Atlas Broadband Solutions Incorporated, except for number 7, which requires sidewalk. That one is denied.
I'll second that motion.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night. Number 7, we have Public Works authorization to purchase park drinking fountains. Greg?
Good evening. In 2023, the Public Works Department is scheduled to purchase 5 new drinking fountains, which are the human and the pet combination, which will be installed in the parks. Attached is a quote dated October 20th of 2023 from General Rec. They are a CoStar's vendor to provide the requested Stern Williams drinking fountains at a total cost of $33,488. The equipment quoted meets the specifications prepared by the department. A total of $20,000 was included in the 2023 capital investment plan for the purchase of the 5 new drinking fountains to be installed in the parks. It is recommended that the Board of Supervisors approve the purchase of the 5 new drinking fountains to be installed in the parks for a total cost of $33,488 per the 2023 capital investment plan.
Did the price just go up that much?
The price did go up compared to what we got quoted last year. And just with the supply chain issues, it's these are the ones that are available for us.
Are they the ones that we wanted? I mean, is this what
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
we're not settling for some
No,
inferior?
no, we're not. They're nice fountains.
Okey doke. Anybody have any other questions?
Can you remind me where they're going to be?
Spring Valley has 2. Fellowship has 1. Wendell Stray has 1. That's William F. Mall. And then there's 1 over at Whistle Stop.
And assuming that this is approved, when would they be installed? Do we have a sense of when we would receive them?
We're hoping to have them in possibly this year. If not this year, it'll be in the spring. So at least if we have them on hand, as soon as weather breaks, we can have them installed for next season.
All right. Well, they sound lovely. I'm going to move to approve the purchase of 5 new drinking fountains, human and pet combo, to be installed in the parks for a total cost of $33,488 per the quote dated October 20th, 2023.
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We have a couple presentations tonight, some special people in the back. Let's start with our MTMSA budget.
Good evening, Montgomery Township Board of Supervisors. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to welcome we have Dave Barrett and Dan Baker from the MTMSA Board as well here with us tonight. So I come to talk to you about the sewer budget. First, I wanted to say happy birthday to MTMSA. We are officially a boomer. For those who were able to make it to our celebration, thank you. If you weren't able to, know that we had a good time and we were very excited to be celebrating this occasion. Thank you to the board for creating us 60 years ago and for being our partner for the last 6 decades. So just to draw your attention to the strategy of MTMSA, the authority strategy is focused on three main points: environmental protection, customer service, and financial stability. The MTMSA board has been able to achieve these goals while maintaining current sewer rates for the 11th consecutive year. This budget is presented to you with these goals reached. The operating budget, where are we? The 2023 budget reflected a strong priority in personnel and investment in the collection system. This year, we achieved the goal of a full complement of 12 staff members at the Eureka plant, which we have been trying to achieve for several years, so we're quite excited. While we are on track for the budget this year and expect to end about 8% under budget, just like you were speaking about earlier with the water fountains, we are seeing increased costs in every aspect of our business as well. We see increased cost in chemicals, in outside lab services, in waste removal services, plumbing supplies, etc. It's a situation that we're following closely. This year's budget is a balanced budget, and again, with no rate increase expected, but we are following the situation in years to come. Where are we going with the operating budget? So for 2024, you can see the pie chart is our projected revenues. As you can tell, 92% of our revenue comes from our sewer rental rates. So we don't have a lot of flexibility in other places to get our revenue. We are seeing an increase in interest income, which I'm assuming everyone else is as well with the rate environment that we're currently in. But in future years, our sewer rates will need to be reviewed to keep up with the increased costs, as we discussed. Our expenses for 2024, our treatment fees to other plants represent the cost that we pay to other townships in order to have some of our flow treated there. So flow that cannot get to MTMSA flows to other municipal authorities, of which we have intermunicipal agreements. And those treatment costs are going up. They're relatively out of our control, but we do perform periodic reviews of our intermunicipal agreements to make sure that everything is in line and the integrity of those agreements is completely intact. Our personnel expenses have grown recently as we have finally reached our full complement of 12 staff members at Eureka after being short-staffed for some time. As you can see, I'm going to zoom in as I've just learned to do. So as you can see for our 2024 budget, we have minimal change from the prior year. Our interest income is growing, as we just discussed earlier. Our treatment fees to other plants, that cost is growing, as we've just discussed, and some minor increases to personnel, as we've discussed. So nothing drastically different from the prior year. Our capital budget, where are we? So our capital budget for 2023 that we presented to you last year, just to give you an update on where we are, we have several large projects that are in front of you. You can see our Basin B rehab. Basin B is the collection system over by the mall, north of North Wales Road, over by Knapp Elementary along that S-curve. That is one of our two oldest sections in our collection system. So for several years, we've been coming to you on our capital budget and speaking about the rehab work that we've done there. This year, we were able to do a little bit more work than we had originally anticipated, and we needed to do that work a little faster. So that's why we were over budget in that area. But we were under budget for some of our items. As you can see, our tank A exterior was slightly under budget. And we've canceled our surge tank perimeter project as we got deeper into the project. Further engineering revealed that we would have been more extensive than we had originally anticipated to do that project. And the additional cost wasn't worth the gain that we were getting for that. So we've put that project on hold. Additionally, when we reviewed a tank A to do the exterior of that, that was more extensive than we originally expected. So we've pushed that off and we did tank D instead this year. So we just flipped those two rehabs. We have a couple other projects that were scheduled for 2023 that we've moved over to 2024. A lot of it is related to vehicle repurchase. We've moved those over because the lead time on vehicles was so long that we weren't going to get it right now. So we've put additional maintenance into our current vehicle fleet and we've lived with those for now. So we've pushed them off till 2024. And in doing that, we've also reprioritized some of our equipment. So instead of replacing it exactly as it is, we're going to repurpose and replace with a different type of equipment. We have two projects, a security system and the largest one, a design of a UV disinfection system. They are important, very important projects, but we have applied for a grant at the end of 2022. We applied for that grant. We were supposed to know in June. We haven't been able to find out yet. They've delayed the awards for that project. So we haven't started it because we're not allowed to start it until we hear about the grant, or else it makes us ineligible for the grant. So that is just pushed off into 2024, but we are anxious to get that started. Capital budget, where are we going? Just by way of example, in the picture in front of you, that is one of 3 of our main blowers. We have 5 over at the plant. 3 are the most industrial that are used on an everyday basis. It's $60,000 just to replace the green portion in front of you in that picture. And we are replacing all 3 of them over the course of 2 years. So I just wanted to give you an example of what some of the equipment is and what some of those costs are. So major capital projects for 2024. We have Basin B rehab. That is the basin that we just spoke about over by Knapp Elementary. Knapp Elementary. And the 2024 budget would be the final phases of rehabilitating Basin B. And then we will be completely done, knock on wood, with that basin, barring any major problems. The Tank A exterior we just spoke about, we're moving that to 2024, and we're doing that because it was a little more extensive than we originally expected, and also we're doing another project in Tank A. So we wanted to do them both at the same time so that tank is only out of commission for a set period of time. The Enhanced Security Access Project, that much like the UV disinfection project, we put in for a grant. We're waiting to hear. We can't start it until we get that, but we are anxious to get that up and moving. Grit removal modification, that just takes out some of the stone and the grit that you see in the system. By removing that from the system, we're able to extend the life of our equipment. Again, replacing some trucks, which we need to do, an aeration system for our surge tank, which we need to have done. We are a 3rd owner of the Hatfield Township Municipal Authority, so we also pay a 1/3 of their capital costs, which is in there. And of course, as you know, we are looking to do a 60th anniversary donation. So we're investigating that as we speak, and we have $500,000 in our capital budget next year for that project to the township.
Ooh, that's nice.
Fun, a favorite project.
This
Love
is
our
just
sewer. We love our sewer.
happy flushing. This is our 5-year, and 5-year, it's the past 5 years, past 3 leading up to the next 2. I just wanted to be able to give a snapshot of the total expenditures that we've had and show you kind of by category where those expenditures are. So you can see we have 5.2 million is on major project enhancements or improvements to the plant. So these are things that are making the plant better than it was originally designed to be. 3.7 million is in major projects that were routine replacement and maintenance. So those are things that just to keep us moving the way we have been, we need to spend that. Major projects in the collection system. The collection system is the 110 miles of pipe and the 7 pumping stations that get the sanitary sewer from the homes and the commercial businesses over to the treatment plants. So that's $7.7 million. As you can see, the largest expense in our capital projects. And a large part of the reason for that is the piping in Basins A and B, which is pretty much the half of the township that's north of North Wales Road. That piping is 60 years old. So it's vitrified clay pipe. Vitrified clay pipe only has a certain lifespan to begin with. It's jointed every 5 feet, so roots get in there. Today we use PVC, plastic pipe, SDR is plastic pipe. You're going 10, 12 feet before you have joints. So you don't get that root intrusion. You don't get the degradation of a pipe like you do in the vitrified clay pipe. So it's very expensive to rehabilitate that. We're doing it by relining. That's much less expensive and invasive than if we were to dig up the road. If we were to dig up the road, that cost would be triple. So we are doing it in the most cost-effective way possible. And then again, Hatfield Authority Capital Improvements, of which we are a third owner. Overview of our capital future. What challenges are ahead of us in the next 5 to 10 years? So Basin B, this has been my favorite conversation for quite some time now. Basin B, as I said, is one of the 2 oldest basins in the township. Pipes range about 60 years old. Basin B took us 4 years. By the end of 2024, it will be completely rehabilitated. The blue lines show you the very first phase in 2021. The yellow lines will show you 2022 and 2023 work. And the green lines are all the work that we're doing in 2024. So you can see why that cost escalated in 2024 is we're doing many more miles of pipe there. We need to get that basin done so we can move over to Basin A. Basin B is about the third of the size of Basin A, and Basin B took us 4 years. So we anticipate Basin A is going to take close to triple that time. Basin A, again, one of the oldest of the 2. Pipes range 60 years old. We're expecting about 10 to 15 years. And you can see Basin A is also the red area, but excluding where that blue outline is. That blue outline here. Let me just highlight that for you. That blue outline here, that designates the Basin B area. Kind of looks a little bit like a home plate. And then Basin A is all this larger area up here. You have a lot of dense areas. You have some townhomes in this area. A lot of piping in a short space. Eureka Wastewater Treatment Plant. That's a lovely drone aerial picture of our plant, if you're not familiar with it. The original plant was put into service in 1991. So the original plant is those smaller 2 tanks that are right here. And they serviced the township from about 1991 to 2004. In 2004, we completed the expansion of Eureka, which are these 2 larger tanks. We call them C and D. These 2 tanks are C and D. We talked earlier about tank A. This one's tank A here. The expansion portion of the plant is now 20 years old. 20 years is the lifespan of mechanical equipment in the wastewater industry. So that's why our capital costs now are getting to be double what they were when we were speaking to you 7, 8, 9 years ago. 7, 8, 9 years ago, a lot of our equipment was still in the new phase, and now it's at end of life. So that's why you're going to see our capital costs increase as we move forward. Just the aging factor.
Can I ask a quick question? A
Sure.
and B not used at all anymore, or they
A
still
and
are
B
used?
are used. They're used for a slightly different purpose. So C and D are where we treat the wastewater. It goes through the anaerobic and the aerobic cycle. A is A here is the section where all the waste comes in. We're working on grit removal modifications in there. So when it'll come into the first section of A, that's where the grit removal will happen. It'll settle to the bottom. The flow will go in, and then we use A to equalize the plant. So we like to treat in C and D equally. We like to send an equal amount of flow to both C and D. So we hold it in A so that we can equally treat in C and D. Sometimes we have to feed a little more to C or a little more to D to keep that balance. But that balance gives us a better biological outcome. So we use A as that equilibrium tank. And then after it goes through the treatment process, the clean water goes out into the waterway, but the sludge, the water that we're not able to clean up all the way, goes into B. And then in B, it goes through a digestion process. And once it gets through the digestion process, then it goes into our tanker truck and we haul it to Hatfield, where they have an incinerator that they're able to burn the remaining factor.
Is that what we smell in Hatfield?
No, it's the
No.
meat.
It's meat. Whoa. That explains a lot. Okay, no, it isn't. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
That's such a great explanation. I never knew.
I
all the
was like, well, what do you do with?
The process is really interesting.
So you repurposed A and B big time.
We did repurpose A and B, and we continue to repurpose them constantly. Like we did about $60,000 worth of modifications to B this year to make the digestion process. The more water we can remove, the less our cost is out to Hatfield, and the less we're taking in sludge. So we were at about a 2% factor. We're trying to get up to about a 3% factor. So we continue to work on that.
Okay.
So in conclusion, the authority is in a very strong position. The board has evaluated the upcoming challenges. They're budgeting for them and they have staff capable of addressing them. The 2024 budget is presented balanced with no rate increase recommended for the 11th consecutive year.
Very
Awesome.
nice.
We need to talk about that more.
Talk about
The 11 years of no rate increase,
11 years.
and we don't have to think about it, which, thank
Right.
you,
You're welcome.
right?
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dave and Dan for everything.
Yes. Yes, you make our jobs easy over here.
Because we don't think about what's going on.
Exactly. I don't want to think about it at all.
Approved, right?
Thanks again. All right, next we have 2024 proposed township budget and authorization to advertise the 2024 budget. Carolyn McCreary and Brian Shapiro.
I don't know how we're going to follow that. You know, I can't tell you that. I don't have any exciting stories about wastewater. So the proposed operating budgets were presented by the department heads and discussed with the Board of Supervisors at a work session that was held on October 27th. We all agreed that we felt that format was very helpful for all of us to sort of get on the same page, understand the bigger picture of not only the township operations by department, but how they're interwoven with each other. The work session was a public meeting and was properly advertised. Personnel matters had been discussed with the board in executive session on October 23rd. And in your packet this evening, you'll have a memo from me regarding the details of all the funds, including each area of the general fund. There's also a memorandum addressing capital projects funding as requested by the board at our budget work session. What we're asking you for the board to consider tonight would be to authorize the 2024 budget as being available for public inspection, and then you would be able to adopt it on December 11th. Under the second class township code, we are required to have an adopted balanced budget in place by December 31st, and this would allow us to meet that time frame. So tonight I wanted to go over the details of the memo, not a whole lot of the smaller funds, but the larger ones, and then to talk about capital. And Brian has some slides that he would like to share with you that just would sort of give you a more of a macro picture of where we're at with things. In my memo, I pointed out that the total operating revenues for the general fund are $14.9 million. They're projected to be 4.9% higher than 2023, and that is primarily due to the estimates that we've received from Berkheimer Associates, who collect your earned income tax, your business privilege tax, your local services tax, and your mercantile tax. All departments remain committed to providing the same levels of service to the public. And overall, our expenditures are budgeted at $14.9 million and are increasing by 3.9%, which I think is highly commendable because, as you know, the last couple of years we have talked nothing other than supply chain issues and now the inflationary pressures that we're facing, just as our residents and businesses are. In terms of the departments, they spoke to you on the budget work session, we're not proposing any major changes in any of the departments. The police services area, the budget is probably the largest increase, and that's primarily due to wages that are going to likely be increasing as a result of a new collective bargaining agreement, as well as 2 proposed hires, which we discussed with the board previously. The fire protection area is due to the increased number of active volunteer firefighters that are eligible for the annual stipend. And that was a calculation based on what we paid out this year. As far as our fire protection fund, the proposed revenue is $1,595,500, and the expenditures are a little over $1.8 million. It's important to note in this fund, the tipping fee, which we previously received from the quarry on Upper State Road, has been eliminated because of the operation ceasing there. The increases in wages are determined by the collective bargaining agreement, which will expire at the end of next year. The other thing that we spoke to you about in more depth had to do with the Community and Recreation Center. We have been very grateful that we are seeing an uptick in activity. And as Floyd told you at your budget work session, we are seeing activity pre-pandemic levels. And we are also have just hired our 4th full-time employee, which brings us back to our level of staffing pre-pandemic. And as I said, you'll be meeting her at our holiday event. We're very excited to have Jenna join us. Staff is very excited over at the CRC. Angelina is looking forward to having someone help her with programming, with other opportunities. You know, I saw Upper Dublin runs bus trips, so I already sent Angelina a note saying, is this something we could consider and what would we have to do to make them be successful? We want to do additional programming in our parks. We've discussed several times doing movie nights in the summer, one a month, possibly one in the fall before it gets too cold. But again, they're great ideas, but you need to have staff run them, and you can't run a recreation center and park programming off of just a couple of people. It is, I can't say it enough, what Floyd has been able to do over there. And I'm over there at different times of the day, either for training or for meetings with people. It's amazing to me that with the limited amount of full-time staff we have, that building is jumping. The diversity of activities that is going on there represents this community. We have everything from obviously, pickleball, but the other day I was over there and there was a meeting going on in 2 of the meeting rooms, which is great. That businesses are using it as a valuable resource. On weekends, there's people renting rooms for parties, and there's just a whole host of activities going on.
Can I interrupt
Our
you for
breakfast, yes.
1 second. I just want to give a round of applause. It would be nothing without you. Thank you for everything.
And breakfast for Santa.
Breakfast with Santa sold out in
Sold out in
minutes.
minutes.
Sold out in minutes. So I wanted to put that on the official record. Sold out in minutes. It's like a Taylor Swift concert. It's amazing to me.
People were talking about it.
Exactly. And we will get calls. People will not understand. It's like Santa's busy this time of year. Like we do the best we can, and then we just have to keep moving.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. So our revenues that we're proposing for the Community Recreation Center are almost 4% higher than 2023. And our operating expenditures are increasing. And that is primarily due, as I said, to the hiring of a 4th full-time employee, as well as increasing the part-time wages, which we really felt were needed for recruitment and retention. We want people who are going to be responsible. We want people who are engaged over there, who aren't just looking at their phone when people walk in. And we felt we needed to just finally really reevaluate our wages. And then after discussion with the board at the work session, we're also going to be looking at raising the fees for Kids University, because we believe for the quality of care and the activities that are going on for 8 weeks in the summer, it is high time that we address that and we make sure that we can continue to run that type of program to that level of success. Going back to what we said when, pre-pandemic, we want to be the gold standard, and we want to be that in all aspects of our operations, including Kids University. One of the bigger challenges that we're facing is our capital. As I told you in our work session, a number of things are aging, just like in your home, and unfortunately they come at the same time. Developers came in, they put in the public improvements. We had traffic signals go in as a result of some of the activity in the township. We replaced all of our street lights several years ago with the street light fund, which was great, but we still continue to have issues. We have 15 parks. We're going to add a dog park, which is great, but it's also going to be more something that we'll have to chart down the road to see how long that agility equipment lasts, how long the sunshades last. We've added bocce courts. We're going to be doing Fellowship Park and then Whistle Stop Park, and we've been fortunate to get grants. I know the Park and Rec Board is very interested in the presentation that's going to be made at their meeting regarding the house in Windlestray. But with that, as a staff perspective, besides like, oh my gosh, another amenity, we're going to have to really take a serious look at how we would pay for it, because there are grants out there, but that also puts us in obviously competition with other communities that might have those similar needs. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the opportunity to continue to fund our capital. So next year in 2024, we have a little over $7.5 million in capital. And of that $7.5 million, almost $860,000 is for road paving projects. And that would come out of the Highway Aid Fund or Liquid Fuels Fund, which is a permitted use in that fund. The rest of it would have to come from the township resources. And we have several options. As you know, we took quite the hit in our capital reserves with the resulting litigation for the Zaire property. That ultimately cost us $7.5 million, which dramatically reduced our reserves. In the past, when the township was in its boom years with development, we were seeing high surpluses in the general fund, which were able to be transferred into the capital reserves fund. We had developer contributions, fees in lieu of for sidewalks, fees in lieu of for traffic improvements, fees in lieu of for parks and recreation. Those have been used up. We borrowed $15 million at 1.76%, which, makes us look like geniuses. We were just really fortunate that we timed the market well there, with our bond counsel and everything advising us. However, if you look at my memo regarding capital projects funding, you will see that our fund balance is slated to go down to a little over 2.5 million at the end of next year. So at that point, we would have to seriously, make some really difficult decisions about what to move forward in. Obviously, the roads could continue to be done under liquid fuels, but there are things like curbing. And again, our parks are aging, and we want to really keep working on them to, upgrade the tot lot equipment, put fall surfaces in instead of wood chips, and make them, the desirable amenities that this township deserves. We can't count on, I said, is on developer contributions. That right now we have a 36 townhomes slated to come in, which are under construction behind the Wawa. There are no other large residential developments. We don't have a lot of raw land left that could be considered for that. One of the board members asked that we look at, the possibility of millage as well. So what I did was I sort of just gave you a scenario. Brian provided it to me, what additional millage would represent, and if that's something that the board would desire. The other option we have is right now we exceed the recommended fund balance in our general fund. GFOA recommends a certain level, and we're about $3.3 million higher. So we could, with the board authorization at your December meeting, transfer that money over and then continue to look at ways to fund things. So that's really where we're at. I can't thank the department heads enough. I know I tell them regularly, but I think it needs to go on the record. I've never met a group of more committed individuals, not just to managing the resources of this township and being really good financial stewards, but the way they work together to lift each other up, to support each other. It really is one team and one family, and I'm really grateful. Brian, do you want to do the slides?
So we have just a couple of slides. Some are the slides that we saw at the workshop that we had in a couple of weeks ago. But the first slide is one of the repeat slides. But again, this is a highlight of the general fund revenues and expenditures from 2018 to projected 2024. The dotted line up top is our revenues, and then the bar graph is expenses by departments for each year. As you can see, the police department represents the biggest portion of the general fund. And then again, as we talked about, and I had to say that because the chief always loves it when we point that out. But anyway, in 2022, as we talked about, the influx of one-time revenues, which we did then eventually transfer out to the capital fund, about 800,000, but that was due to the real estate market, one-time sales of the mall, Airport Square, and then an influx of a business privilege tax and mercantile tax due to COVID-related reporting. So that's the first slide.
And if I could just stop a second, we tease the police, but they represent 54% of our general fund budget, which is not unheard of in municipalities. But I think it's really important to note that 95% of it is really out of the chief's control. I think he gets office supplies and maybe operating supplies at his whim, if you will, but everything else is pretty much dictated. Everything from the cost of the vehicle maintenance, the fuel, the insurance that we carry, because we carry professional liability insurance for our police officers, everything, and then everything else is covered by the collective bargaining agreement.
This next slide sort of reiterates the first slide, but adds fund balance, as Carolyn pointed out in her memo. Again, revenue is the green line, expenditures are the red line, and how our fund balance has increased over the years. And as Carolyn indicated, GFOA, which is the Government Financial Officers Association, has a recommended fund balance for each fund, which we'll be presenting to you in December as a fund balance policy to formally adopt. But we are over that recommended level where we could transfer some of this general fund balance into the capital fund to help replenish some of those items. But as you can see, the dotted line has been growing with the fund balance. CRC, Carolyn mentioned, here's a little bit of a history from 2018 pre-pandemic to projected 2024. CRC operations, blue line is revenue, green is transfers in, and the dotted line is expenditures. In 2018, again, concentrating on the blue line, 2018 to 2019, revenues are going up. And then per the study that was conducted in 2015, it was always going to be a 5-year period where it's going to hit its peak. That was 2020, and it actually went down because we had to shut for a couple months with COVID and all that stuff. But it has slowly grown back up to projected 2024 to go back out to the 2018 revenue level. So it's getting back to pre-pandemic proportions. And then the black line is the expenditures. This one was a slide that we showed at the workshop. Going to Carolyn's point, by end of 2024, we have a projected right now $2.5 million capital fund balance. And if we don't do anything, either generate additional revenues, one-time transfers, there will be no capital fund balance at the end of 2025 based on our capital outline or capital improvement plan. And the next two slides is just a summary of our millage. This is something that we put in the big budget document where Montgomery stands overall townships within the county. We are still 24th as millage rates compared to, again, all the townships within Montgomery County. And then the last slide is how our tax bill is breaking up. So for every dollar, 6 cents, 6.7 cents represents what average resident pays to Montgomery Township. County is second at 12.6 cents, and the school district is at 81 cents. Those are all the slides I have.
So if the board has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, either based something following up from the budget work session or from the memos that were in your packet. If not, then we would be seeking the board a motion to authorize the advertisement of the 2024 budget and that it's available for public inspection.
So I have a question, and this just could be idiotic. 2025 will have no capital fund balance left. What exactly does that mean? How do we?
It means that we would basically, our capital investment plan would be frozen because we wouldn't have funds to do it. Because your general fund typically handles all of your normal operations.
Right.
Capital is a separate fund. We would basically not have money to move
We would
forward.
be out of money.
Yes, we would be able to do roads as long as Liquid Fuels had enough funds in there to cover our road. And Greg's goal is to get our roads to where they become more of a maintenance. We've extended, it used to be a 16-year road plan, and really there is no reason why residential neighborhoods should have to be paved in 16 years. Certainly roads like Stump Road, absolutely, they get the wear and tear, but residential roads don't. So Greg and his road foreman have really done a much better job of evaluating the roads and really looking at them and, taking a hard look and making determinations as to when they should really be considered for paving. And the other thing that we've looked at is, alternatives to the typical road paving. But right now, the way costs are, there's not really a material difference between, say, microsurfacing and paving in the traditional manner.
And,
so yes.
And on top of that, with that, as you can see from this first slide, historically, the general fund is breaking about even. Yes, we're take 2022 out. We're, trending to be always breaking even. So that trend of transferring money to the capital fund projected will no longer be there if revenues and expenditures stay obviously the same over the next couple of years. Yes, we are. We did mention in the memo about transferring $3.5 million or 3.3, which would, up this number, to, 2.5 plus 3.3, just call it, 5.5 million. However, our capital plan, we're going to be coming back next year and saying, we won't have enough for 2025, and by 2026, there will be nothing in that capital plan, in capital improvement fund.
So will that ultimately put us in a position that we have to take out another big loan?
So this assumes, I just want to clarify, because this assumes we don't transfer those 3.5 million funds. And it also assumes that we don't increase the millage.
That's correct. That's correct. This is just status quo. And I wanted Brian to show that. So to answer your point, we wouldn't necessarily borrow. The reason we borrowed the last time is because when we sat down as a group and looked at what our capital needs were, it was staggering to us how we were going to be able to do it based on what we had in our reserves. Then we lost in the Zara litigation, and that took it down even more. So we borrowed 15 million, but it wasn't just sitting there for a rainy day. We had a 5-year plan in place. What we didn't count on was the exponential increases that we have seen in materials, in labor. We would get to a point, I think, if we don't do anything, we might have a single project and we could be in this situation where we would reject the bid because we just don't have the money, even though it's the low bid, because of just the way things are trending. We're trying to, we've done our best. And I know I said it before, but to have a general fund increasing a little under 4% with what we're dealing with currently, I think just says a lot for how everybody's really exercising care while still maintaining the levels of service for everyone. But as far as the capital, we talked about this in the work session. There were things that just weren't addressed in timely manner. I will put it that way. And as a result, it's coming home all at once. And, we have to do the traffic signals when they need to be done. If they're written up in an inspection, we have to address them. Our roads have to be addressed. Curbing has to be done before you can put the roads in. The equipment that we buy, they extend it as much as they can. But again, in the past, when things were passed over, now we need to do it. We need a street sweeper. Yes, it's $400,000, but there is no way around that because of our stormwater, our MS4 requirements. We're not out there sweeping streets just because it's an aesthetic for the residents. It's because we have to remove the debris off the road so it doesn't go into the waterways.
And then going to the borrowing, and unless we start a new project like we did with the rec center or something like that, really every 20 to 25 years, you're going to do a big borrowing because now you're going to be replenishing what we just did. You should have enough capital reserves, like utilizing liquid fuels to do roads every year. Police cars are a constant thing. You should have a set, once you get past that big one-time improvement, that's when you do your one-time loans or you loans every 20, 25 years.
So if we were to think about additional millage, would we be earmarking that's going to the capital reserves just to build up what we don't have anymore?
Yes, we would. We would have to, and I had Brian look at this in the code this afternoon because he had nothing better to do. It has to go into the general fund, but you would then transfer it into capital reserves. And if you did do any kind of an increase, it would be prominently noted on all of our social media and our communications with residents that is solely being done for capital reserves, to put money aside so that we can continue on with the projects that we've got. And we're not expanding them. The parks we're working on, and we've been very fortunate that we've gotten some grants. But those projects are involving parks that have aged as well. And, there's different standards now. And, you've had a resident come in and talk about, sensory components, and we're putting that in all of our playgrounds. As we go, we're trying to update them and so that we can have an inclusive environment for everyone. We're looking at putting a traffic garden into Spring Valley Park, which, would allow children to, have a simulated area to be able to safely ride their bikes and their little tricycles, but also teach them at the same time and partner with groups like TMA, for bike helmet giveaways and things like that. But all these things cost money. Every time we added, an amenity in the past, they're great. All these parks, it's a wonderful community, for parkland, but they all need to be maintained. I've been in meetings where, public works directors have been challenged about why do we need more mowers or why do we need to replace the mowers? Well, this isn't like just mowing your quarter acre in a neighborhood. These are large parks that, our staff is maintaining, and we would be paying even more if we were contracting it out. And it probably wouldn't be to the standard that this township wants anyway.
Well, and you had a good point. You said residents deserve it, but I will say that our residents have come to expect it. Right. So if something isn't right at Spring Valley Park, we are getting the phone calls. So
yes, absolutely.
We don't have the developers anymore funding these things for us. And we're also hiring some extra police officers because of what's happening in the world and looking to keep our residents safer and feeling safer. So,
well, even the walkability component, we put a sidewalk in on Stump Road. Now we're looking at another part of Stump Road, again, to safely bring people across. We want people to walk in the township. We have to do things to help ensure their safety. So there's rapid flashing beacons when they're in with the traffic island in the center. It's going to get people across safely, and it's going to put motorists who sometimes are distracted to recognize that there are pedestrians ahead. It's not going to be constantly on strobing. It's only when someone engages it, and then they will be able to safely traverse. But that all costs money. Another dog park that, the board invested in that they wanted, we recognize that where the dog park is now, it's not functional. We can't do anything as far as the drainage over there because we don't own the land around it. We don't own the parking lot. So the board said, let's look at another option. We have residents who have come out and said that they would like a dog park. I get calls or emails probably weekly about pickleball. I mean, you're right. There is an expectation, but all these amenities have a cost. And it's not just the initial cost of when you put them in. It's when things come up and they have to be, and nothing is sexy about a traffic signal. There's just no, do a park and cut the ribbon and everybody's like oohing and ahhing when I'm saying, yeah, I have to replace this traffic signal. And, when you do everything and make the ADA improvements now, $700,000. I mean, there's just no way around it, and again, we've been fortunate. We have a grant for the one down at English Village, but we're just hoping that what it comes in at is what, we've budgeted for.
But just the example of tonight, the new drinking fountains, water fountains for the pets and that's a new upgrade that I think is really going to be appreciated. I think people are going to notice it. They're going to comment. They're going to be happy about it because they like their pets more than their kids.
Well, they do, and it was supposed to cost us 20,000 and it's costing 33.
I know.
So I guess the bigger question is, if we don't do it this year, it will be a bigger tax increase that will have to come next year.
Not necessarily bigger, but you're going to be 1 year behind. Let's look at it that way. So, that's a board decision. I mean, I would recommend that at your December meeting, you at the very least reallocate the general fund money into the capital to keep the fund balance as it should be for GFOA purposes. And then, to Brian's point, after the audit's over, we look at it in the spring and say to you, okay, 2023, we ended up with a surplus. We'd like to transfer that. Or, we had a deficit and we need to think about that going forward.
But we can consider the transfer as well as a millage increase.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
Yes. I just wanted to give you enough time to think about it, because your December 11th meeting will be here before you know it. And at the very least, we are going to have one there to adopt a formal fund balance policy, which we have heard about when we did our bond. One of the when we did with the rating agency, they did note, that we should put in a formal policy. So we're going to bring that to the board. And then it'll be our recommendation that another action item be to reallocate money from the general fund into the capital fund.
So we could make a decision December 11th on extra millage or not?
Yes, you can. Well, you can discuss it again if you want at your next meeting, which is the 27th.
Oh, okay. That's
And
right. We
then-
have one more meeting.
Right. And
before.
then based on that discussion, we would be in position, and I've been at meetings where I've had several resolutions in front of me, so that whatever the board decided that night, I pulled it out and that's what was adopted. So
Does anyone feel strongly one way or the other to make a decision on it tonight? No, so we'll
No, I mean, the
I'd rather think
transfer, I
about
think
it.
needs
Yeah,
to
I think I
happen.
need to
So
think
we
about it.
just-
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about it at next meeting.
Right.
And certainly if you have any questions, reach out to Brian and I, we'd be happy to, discuss it further, talk about scenarios, talk about what, is on the budget or on the plan already for 2025. Our road paving projects I'm looking is almost $1.3 million. And again, like these were great roads when they got put in, and the developers came in and it was wonderful. You had brand new roads, but now,
Well, and they are great roads, and you drive into other counties and realize how lucky we are that we do take such good care, and people are going to expect us to keep doing that.
even in our own township, we attended a HOA meeting last week, and one of the questions had to do with Upper State Road and when are you going to pave that? And I said, it's not a township road, it's a state road, and there's nothing I can do there. And I suggested that they reach out to their state representative and their state senator and, put a bug in your ear that, you think the road needs to be paved. And that's about all we can do. I said, that's all I would do. I don't have any pull with PennDOT. They have their budgetary constraints as well. And they're dealing with a much wider service area than just Montgomery Township.
So
But that's fine. All I'm looking for tonight is an authorization to advertise. And that would be the budget itself. You would, again, any discussion about moving money from the general fund or, changing anything in your millage or leaving it the way it is for another year, that would be discussed, the night that we would adopt the budget.
Okay. All right. So everyone's okay just moving ahead to advertise it, correct? All right. I'm going to move to authorize the advertisement of the proposed 2024 budget, all funds as being available for public inspection with the removal of the funding for the power line trail.
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Were there any other questions about that? Okay. Administration and Finance, we have authorization for the sale of municipal equipment by online auction. Ryan
Thank you.
Shapiro.
Yep, thank you. The township by resolution is authorized to dispose of surplus assets through Municipid, an online auction company. Municipid assesses fees to the buyer only. The buyer fees are aggregated. There are no charges or fees assessed to the seller. The administration of the bid will be handled by township staff. The township will have to meet the advertisement requirement as outlined in the second class township code. The following items as listed are recommended by various department heads to be sold on Municipid. It is estimated it will generate about $12,000 in revenue from the sale of this. It is recommended that the Board of Supervisors authorize the sale of the above listed items to the online auction company Municipid. Once the bids are received, the Board of Supervisors will need to pass a resolution authorizing the sale.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
On the budgeting of these, how did it get sold? Does that come back to each department then, or how does
We
that
put
work?
it, there's a line item in the capital fund, sale of fixed assets, so it goes back into the capital.
Okay. I'm going to move to authorize the sale of the above listed equipment through the online auction company Municipid.
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Going into new business, a resident concern, street tree removals. Carolyn McCreary.
Thank you. I wanted to get the board's consensus tonight about an issue that we're having with, we've had several residents reach out to us about people taking down trees, specifically street trees. I had a resident who reached out to Ms. Bamford and then was directed to contact me. They were concerned about trees being taken down in their neighborhood. I've had a couple phone calls from people, one being on the EAC who had asked about what our policies are. I explained to Mr. Hamp that when a tree is taken down, if it's brought to our attention, we will look. And if it was on the subdivision and land development, plan, we will notify the property owner. You also have a shade tree ordinance. But that's as far as we have gone in the past. We have notified them that if they take down a tree, they need to replace the tree. One of your residents is not satisfied with even the idea of taking the tree down because of the fact that obviously you take a mature tree down, you're not replanting with a mature tree. Another resident told me that they thought it was none of the township's business what they do because the township's not out there raking their leaves, cleaning up, the pods that come down from the tree. And I understand that part as well because 20 years ago, some of the trees that were approved aren't really the kind of trees you want now. And we've learned that. We've learned not to put the same tree like all the way down a street because if the blight comes through, it's going to take out all those trees. So we've learned to mix them. We've learned that some are better for shading a street than others. They serve different purposes. Obviously, shade trees in general, wherever they're at on a property, provide shade. The ones that are street trees are meant to take the heat off of the macadam, that we all have through the neighborhoods. So at this point, we really need to know what the board wants to do. Just how far do you want to go in the enforcement of this? Keeping in mind that, we have other enforcement issues that we're dealing with regarding our open space right now that we're struggling as well. So I need some direction because obviously we can do all the education we want and we can put out proactive pieces and tell people why trees are important. We give out free trees, obviously. We can always increase that number. It's a cost to the shade tree fund, obviously. And some of those trees are not suitable to be street trees. They're more, the type you would have on your property, not even necessarily for shade, but also for the aesthetics of it. So we need direction before we come up with a plan. We need direction. And I reached out to the solicitor's office because the one resident had quoted our subdivision and land development ordinance. And I wanted to be sure I was reading that section correctly. And then I also looked up our shade tree ordinance because there is a section in there as well that discusses pruning, trimming, thinning, raising, or removal of trees.
I will add that as the liaison to the Shade Tree Commission, that we also had a resident come out and make public comment at a recent meeting complaining about the removal of street trees as well. And at the conclusion of that meeting, was the Shade Tree Commission's recommendation not to make any changes to our policy. There was a lot of discussion around, could we, through our Arbor Day tree giveaway, offer suitable street trees to the public. So those would be much larger, and it would be much more expensive to give away, those sorts of trees in the Arbor Day tree giveaway. But could that be a way to incent these folks who aren't replacing the street trees with a tree that would be suitable? So there was a lot of discussion around it, but ultimately I felt as if the existing policies in place were sufficient, and sending out those letters of notification upon receipt of a complaint should be sufficient for a homeowner to take action to remedy the situation. So that was the recommendation from the Shade Tree Commission.
Can I ask, what do we know is the result of these said notifications that are sent out? Do people actually put
We
trees
typically
in?
don't follow up.
But to say, because in my own development, there are just trees gone and they don't replace them.
So I have had some people reach out to me to say that they're struggling to afford to put their trees back. And I put them in touch with some local landscapers who are willing to help them. You can't replace a mature tree with, I don't know how the diameter, but yes, you can plant it with a smaller one and it will eventually get there. I mean, maybe we just need to allow smaller, I don't know the technical term.
The caliper of the.
Caliper.
Well, you heard tonight with the proposed 2-lot subdivision, they're taking out 2 trees that are very large, but they're putting in 8. And yes, they're smaller, but they're putting in 8. So, in a development situation like that, it's not an unreasonable, but you're talking about a homeowner now. So again, I've had some people who say, if they're taking one down, they should put another one up. And I've had a call that said, no, that's not good enough because, somebody took 2 large oak trees were taken down. And, even if they put something up, it's going to take years and years and years. We saw an instance where someone took down an evergreen tree in our park that was adjacent to their home. And that evergreen tree obviously had taken decades to get to that size. And even if, we replaced it, it's even though it was just one tree, right? Exactly. It's just a matter of how far do you want to take it? If we send out letters, we're complaint based, we don't go out and drive around looking for things like that. So if we get a complaint, typically they would send a letter, advising them about it, telling they need to replace it. And then what do we do if they don't? And how much time do you give them? So obviously somebody who does it in the summer, you're not going to tell them plant a tree now because it's not going to be viable. So you tell them in the fall, and then somebody on staff has to make a note that come before the end of the fall, go out and check and make sure they did it. And if they didn't, then what?
How often is this happening that we're hearing trees are being taken down?
It's not happening a lot. It's just, I just wanted to bring it to because a couple of them came to me and said, I spoke to a board member who told me to reach out to you, and so the question is, what do we do? How do
Happened all along my street. And I know
It's never
for a
been
fact that they
enforced.
have received the notification letters because I live on that street, all the neighbors within a certain area received that same letter. And I can vouch for the fact that none of those street trees were replaced. No one complied with the request from the township.
I mean, the street trees do make our neighborhoods more beautiful. So,
and cooler.
And cooler, correct. And if you don't want people to just cut it down because they don't want to rake the leaves, I mean, the place would just look barren.
But it gets back to what do you want us to do?
Right.
And staff prioritization.
Yeah. So in a borough, obviously, they don't have as much green space as a township. Typically you see a lot of shade tree commissions very active in boroughs for that reason, because taking a tree down has a dramatic effect in an area that might only be 3 square miles. Do we want to be the tree police? Do we want to say, okay, Mr. Smith, we gave you to the end of October to replace the tree. We told you about our Arbor Day, your giveaway for trees. You did nothing, now what?
I mean, maybe we do want to be the tree police. I mean, we're making businesses not have plastic bags to help the environment. We want our trees.
And you're a tree city. So, like we've gotten that, award, for a number of years now. I just need to know what you would like us to do because, I don't want to get us involved in planting them.
Right.
Because we'll plant it and nobody's going to water it. And then the next thing you know, I'm going to get calls. Well, it's great that you planted those trees, but we don't have the resources to be out there. We don't have a water tank that we can go around and, it's just, I think education is a big component of it. And to Ms. Bamford's point about, looking at the trees and, when you get near the time where you're going to order trees for, maybe you designate part of them. And, we send letters out to the people that we know have gotten them previously and say, there are trees available. And if it's a first come, first serve, but if you come here, you can get one for free and plant it and maintain it.
Well, if the people have received a letter because they did take a street tree down, they should be a priority on
I
that
would
list for
reserve
the
them.
bigger-
I
right.
would reserve one a street tree for them to come and get it at Arbor Day. I like that idea. And after that, if they don't,
But
do
again,
it,
if they don't, now, now what?
What do you want them, what do you want her to do?
There has to ultimately be some teeth to this, some
Right,
sort of a
what's the
fine,
consequence?
if they don't comply within a certain amount of time. Is there any precedent? I mean, are there examples of other communities that we can look at where they have some sort of a fine, a consequence in place?
I don't know of any off the top of my head. I can
That's a
certainly put a
consortium
question.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can certainly put it out to the consortium and see.
that would be helpful.
I can say this, my firm represents numerous municipalities in Montgomery and Bucks County, and I don't, and been in a lot of meetings, I don't, and perfectly appropriate to go out to the consortium. I don't really remember an active enforcement action in any of my other communities, just to beyond a warning.
I mean, I think most people do want to keep their property looking lovely and caring about it. The ones that have contacted me, it's been a financial issue as to why they couldn't replace it. And we were able to help. But
So currently your shade tree ordinance, which looks like there was a provision added in 2010. Pruning, trimming, or removal. A permit shall be required for any person to cut, prune, trim, or break greater than 10% of all branches on any shade tree, to climb with spurs, or to remove any street tree or any tree that was required to be planted as part of a subdivision or land development, or to cut or interfere in any way with the main roots of any tree in such a manner that it would result in injury to a tree. So if on an approved plan, my front yard showed it had 2 trees and I took one down, I'm required to get a permit to take it down. And then if I take it down without a permit, I'm in violation of your ordinance.
And so, and what is the?
It's also, if it's on the plan and if it's a shade, so if it's on the approved plan as well as if it's a street tree, each of those has that component to it.
We would have you'd eventually have the ability to cite under that if you wanted to.
Right. So it's already really in place.
Yes.
It's a function of.
So it would be a
not having-
non-criminal citation.
Yep.
so can we just blast it out there on social media? I mean,
We can do any of those things. I just want to know when I get the call that says, okay, on Twining Road, they've taken down all these street trees and you sent letters and nobody's doing anything. Now what are you going to do about it? Do you want to cite people for taking trees down? That's the bottom line.
I think there's a difference. I think a lot of people took down diseased and dead trees. And then there are people that took down trees because they saw their neighbors taking their trees down and they were actually like, I'm jealous because they don't have to rake. And I feel as if that's a far greater offense, whether they were dealing with taking a dead tree down is actually a safety issue because the tree could fall on somebody or onto their sidewalk or into the road. Whereas someone that's doing it, but I feel as if each one of them needs to know. I think that there is a vacuum of information
Well, you have a permitting process.
Right.
So someone who comes in and says, I need to get a permit because I need to take down this mature ash tree that's on my property, and I'm concerned because it's dying. It's clear that it's not.
Right.
We give a permit out, we take their word on it, we give them a permit. It's an honor system.
Right.
Then we get a call from the neighbors saying they took down a perfectly healthy tree. You need to do something about this. And they said they got a permit from the township.
But point of clarification here. So when was that clause added about the permitting process?
2010.
In 2010, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
added 6/28/2010.
2010. Yeah.
Yep.
And how many permits are being issued for taking those types of trees down? Do
I
we
don't know. I would guess very few
No,
because I didn't even
right.
know we had a permit
Right.
process.
That's all I
for
didn't
that.
know either.
Yeah.
We have one. I didn't know we needed a permit.
I was just curious to know because I know that it's been a while since, like, I can remember trees coming down in neighbors' yards and not, in some cases, it was like a storm or something else that happened that caused the tree to come down. They didn't, it wasn't, and then they had to pay to have it removed, but then never replaced it.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to think, and permitting process wise, does this allow for acts of God
That's an emergency
Yeah.
situation then.
That's an emergency. Well, you wouldn't have to take a permit out to remove a tree
To
in
get
the
out of
circumstance.
This
your
doesn't
house
offer
now.
any exceptions in there. Common sense to me, yes. Obviously, if a tree, we look at our own open space. If we have a tree that's, looks like it's dead or dying, I will ask Public Works to remove it because I don't want it falling on a neighboring property. It's one thing if it falls in our open space, it falls in our open space. But the way I read this is it's street trees and shade trees that were put in as part of an approved subdivision plan. So if I move in and I put a tree in and 5 years out, I decide, I hate this tree, I can take it out because I'm going to put it in.
Right.
But if it was put in because it shows on a record plan, there's little shaded things that, look like a child drew representing trees, then they would have to put another one in.
And none of these exceptions will probably ever flush out because it was never really enforced strictly.
Right.
So what if, again, we're only doing this by people complaining, we don't have tree police driving around. You send them a letter, they don't do it. We offer them a free suitable tree at Arbor Day, reserve it for them. I know this is extra paperwork for someone. And then if they ignore that, it's a year that has gone by. I don't know, I would fine them.
What we have to remember is that a suitable street tree is a several $100 tree. We're not talking a sapling.
Well, that's why we're saying maybe every Arbor Day from now on, we have 20 trees. Like we pay some extra to have some larger trees. It's not the perfect tree that they took down, but the point is they're planting a tree that will get there better than no tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth a shot. We're going to try
would
to
do it.
help them fix
No,
it for free.
I'm just trying to think of another way to.
The only other thing you could do in terms of tree giveaway is for the next couple of years, if you want to eliminate the ornamental trees, if you will, the shade tree, and focus on street trees, then you could get, a nicer caliber of street tree, just not as many. And if you want to, but I'm just concerned about reserving them and the person doesn't come in and I'm stuck with shade with these trees. What am I doing? It's one thing now, it's first come, first serve and they're gone versus we put 10 trees aside and those people don't come in and there's nobody in line for them because we reserved them.
I think we could put
We can
names in a
deliver them.
lottery. I think we put names in a lottery and say we're going to do this as a lottery, almost to say we're going to pull names. I know that Upper Gwinnett and Hatfield, I believe, their tree giveaways they do reserves. And they were like, "How do you do this?" I'm like, we have a lot of trees. They don't do as many, but they do bigger ones, and I think Ambler does it that way as well. So let's find out more what other municipalities are doing for their tree giveaways, and maybe we can get like a best practice from them and copy their.
Could we ask the Shade Tree Commission to look at that?
Yes, we can. Great, and I can help too because I know people.
It's okay. We'll let the Shade Tree Commission do it.
Okay.
That's what. they're
I'll speak to
doing.
Mary Ann and we'll do
They
another.
meet next week.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
We'll look at our
It is
letter
a
that we're
authority
currently
meeting.
sending and we'll see about changing the wording and then we'll also do an education piece as well.
For sure. Sounds great. Does anyone have anything else? Seeing none, I'm going to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for staying, ma'am. Thanks for the pictures.